I told you.
Mr. Evans, ready? I'd like to call to order our Community Redevelopment Agency regular meeting, which I believe this is a special meeting. Today is August 26th. The time is 6:09 p.m. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Chair Lawson,
Here.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Here.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Present.
Commissioner Lanier, Commissioner Spiritus, also present, Mayor Ronnie Felder, Chris Smith with the attorney for the CRA with Pittman Law Group, Scott Evans, the interim executive director, Shirley Desir, interim CRA clerk.
Thank you. Can we have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mayor Felder? Commissioner McCoy.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Attorney Smith, question. This would be considered a special meeting, correct? Because we have it titled as a regular meeting? It's a regular meeting, but it's not on the regular date. So how do we consider this a regular meeting? Just, I guess if we can just confirm that for the record, and also additions, deletions, substitutions, Mr. Evans? Go ahead. Your microphone. If we could repeat it one more time?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I propose to add to the agenda discussion of the process to hire an executive director.
Where do you want to add that? Board members, do we want to have that after presentations? Under discussion items? Okay. 6A? Additions, deletions, substitutions? Motion to adopt agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Before we take a vote, any disclosures about the commission or the staff? Roll call, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier, Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 5-0.
Consent agenda. Items on consent are routine in nature and followed by one single majority vote. If anyone would like to remove an item from consent, we can do that with an open discussion. Does any commissioner want to remove an item? Motion to adopt consent?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment cards?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
there are no public comment cards.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Oh,
Roll call, please.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
hold on.
Public comment for consent? Oh, thank you, Ms. Graham.
Mr. Chair, there are no comment cards for the consent item.
Thank you so much. Roll call, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. Presentations? 5A?
Item 5A, fiscal year 2023 RBCRA and RBCDE financial audit. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Mr. Chair, we have no comment cards.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
We have a presentation from HCP. Mr. Harvey Thompson. Hello, good afternoon, Commission Chair. My name is Roderick Harvey with HCT. We are the audit firm of record for the Riviera Beach CDE. We will be presenting the audit results for the year ended September 30, 2023. Hopefully, we will get the presentation back up so we can all follow along. There it is. All right, awesome. We are pleased to present the audit result again for the year September 30, 2023. We had our engagement letter is dated December 28th of last year. We issued a clean audit opinion or unmodified audit opinion for the year ended September 30, 2023. The date of our audit report is April 26th of 24. Over the next few minutes, we will discuss the audit results. We'll go through supplementary slides and also talk about the responsibility or the tripod of responsibility. Our audit was performed in accordance with GAS, Generally Accepted Auditing Standards. We planned our audit procedures. There was no change to them. We issued all of the appropriate AICPA audit reports. There are no outstanding matters, and all significant accounting policies and procedures are noted in Note 1 of the financial statements. As relates to significant accounting estimates, we deem those as allowance for doubtful accounts and also depreciation, significant risk or areas of concern, management override, and revenue recognition. Uncorrected misstatements, we have no matters to report. Corrected misstatements or things that needed to be journalized, there were no journal entries needed in the current audit, which is always great. And financial presentation and disclosure omission, there are none. Control deficiencies, we have no matters to report. Related party issues or findings, we have no matters to report. And if this audit report is used in any other document, we request that we be made aware of that additional use of the financial statements. This slide is very important because it covers our communication or required communication to you as the elected officials or those charged with governance. And as you can see in the various areas, we have no matters to report. I will highlight a few: illegal acts, no actual or suspected fraud, going concern, subsequent events, no findings, no significant difficulties encountered during our audit. Again, as you can see, we were able to get through this year's audit in a very clean and concise fashion. We are deemed independent as relates to the rules of the Auditor General and the AICPA. Now we will go over some of the supplemental slides that we have for you. We will spend time talking about financial reporting, expenses, revenue, and capital assets. Financial reporting. Again, we performed our audit under GAS, Generally Accepted Auditing Standards, to ensure that the CRA has its accounting in accordance with GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. Expenses, we'll start there. For the year 23, 7.8 million as compared to 6.7 million for the same time period ended in 22. We selected a sample of significant transactions and tested those expenditure transactions for completeness, accuracy, and presentation. We also tested transactions for compliance with state statute 163.3876 of the Florida statutes. Moving forward to revenue, looking at the year under audit 23, 11.7 million as compared to 12.4 for 22. We selected a sample of revenue transactions and tested those for existence, accuracy, and presentation of the revenue recorded. We also tested those revenue streams for compliance with, again, the appropriate Florida statute. Capital assets remained relatively flat for the year 23, 23.3 as compared to 23.1 million in 22. Again, we selected capital assets and tested those capital assets for completion, and we recalculated the depreciation expense. Our responsibility as your auditors includes to express an opinion on the financial statements, also to evaluate the internal control environment if there are any weaknesses or noted deficiencies in the control environment. We are set to report those to you. There are two types of deficiencies that can be found. A significant deficiency, which is a deficiency in internal controls over financial reporting, less severe than a material weakness, yet important enough to be brought to the attention of those charged with governance. The next type of internal control finding is a material weakness, which is a internal control deficiency over financial reporting such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement in the entity's financial statements will not be prevented, detected, or corrected on a timely basis. Based on our audit and our review, we have no current year findings to report to you. Moving forward, discussing the tripod of responsibility. Management is responsible for the fair presentation of the financial statements, for making any adjustments, also the design and implementation of internal controls environment. Management is also responsible to make sure we as your auditors have access to information and people. The audit committee are those charged with governance. They are responsible for oversight of the financial control process and to ensure that the management maintains controls that's designed to prevent, detect, and deter fraud. Our responsibility, again, as your auditors, is to audit and express an opinion to ensure that the organization is using GAAP and to report any of our findings to you. And so this slide requires us to report anything that we feel or that rises to a level to you as the oversight committee or those charged with governance. And at this time, if time will allow, Chair, we will do our best to answer any questions that you all may have of us.
Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Harvey. Questions from the board? Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Harvey, if you will, I think you covered in one of the previous slides the highlights. Particularly, I was looking at the revenues decreasing by $700,000 despite property taxes increasing. How you reconcile that?
So bad.
Right there.
Yeah, 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I not reading? Yes.
Right, so it went down from 12.4 to 11.7, I'm sorry, $1 million. I will have to investigate and get back to you. Um, As you are aware, the CRA deals with TIF dollars to see if there were any adjustments or differences that would not have allowed that increase to come over to the CRA side.
Okay. There was one other thing that also caught my attention. So I know you didn't, I know you did sampling and testing, but the other highlight that you pointed out was the expenses, and that was an increase of $1,134,000, which is about just over 15% from the previous year, and associated that with operating expenses. Now, I know you didn't probably do a year by year or side by side comparison, but what if you were to suggest, because one of the things is we don't even get, and I thought this was in one of the previous findings, that we as the board should have been getting routine updates in terms of financial reporting from management, which has never actually happened. I think once over on the city side, but never here.
Right, that is a city finding that was issued a couple years back. I don't believe that same requirement or recommendation was made at the CRA side.
I think that's a semantics and even a circular argument when you consider the CRA's financial reports fall up under the city's comprehensive financial reports.
Yes, sir.
However, I'm just curious, I think I'm not the only one that said this, but the board has kind of wanted to, and it's been stated publicly, that the mission of the CRA is redevelopment. And I want to make sure that we're not increasing $1 million for feel-good events, and we're not doing anything in terms of moving the needle towards more redevelopment efforts. And that's more of a question that I would look to management to decide, or if this is just an increase associated with the inflation costs. So, that's what caught my attention. I'm like, how do we now show on our highlights that we've decreased revenue, but our expenses increase, and I'm really not seeing where. Now, I do know we did experience, at least for the last couple of years, quite a bit in some professional services, bringing on, we brought on, we've already had legal, we've had consultants for every one of the projects, the signature project, certainly for the marina project, which has costed us quite a bit. So I just kind of wanted to know over $1 million in expenses increase. I just kind of want to know, like, as a board, we should be able to see those results. So if I heard my colleagues say results that you can see, and I'm trying to figure out, is it just associated with inflation, or is it some project? And that's not a question for you per se, but I'm speaking generally. So that's, kind of the things that popped out at me when I was looking at your reports. One other thing is, I know you're not able to point out every single deficiency, but I was really interested, and I was hoping that there was going to be some more details on the related party transactions, because when I see it, it only, and I guess this is a good question. So your related party transactions, which I think you noted in number 7 of the statements, it only points out the significant, I guess, ones that would have a material impact. So is it not important to identify, those incidentals, like, the various relationships and the interlocal agreements the city has with the CRA? I know certainly we're working on a program now that the CRA is administering for the home improvement, and then there's some fees associated with it that the city pays the CRA. So your notes don't get that detail. Is that based on the materiality, or is just de minimis as to why it's not listed?
So great question. I want to add a little bit of a wrinkle to the question, or clarity. Related parties for us deal with persons in management or elected who have some transaction with the organization, whether it's another person by blood or marriage. And so that is the first baseline. Then, as a procedure, we send out related party questionnaires and ask each person in management or the elected to self-report to us what transactions or dealings they have with the organization that they are involved in. Based on those answers, then we will decide if it's de minimis or not. Usually, if it's significant, we will follow up to find out what transactions are out there. What you named would more so be intergovernmental or interfund transactions between the city and the CRA. Those would not fall under related parties. They would fall under normal eliminating or transactions, intergovernmental transactions between CDE, CRA, and city that would not cause us to report a related party issue just to see if it is within GAAP accounting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy. Additional comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Harvey, again. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Discussion, 6A.
6A, Executive Director position. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Mr. Chair, we have three public comment cards
Thank
for
you.
this item.
And just to circle back to presentations, we didn't need a motion to accept the audit presentation. Thank you. Okay. Discussion, Mrs. Scott Evans?
Mr. Chair, I would ask Mr. Smith to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this evening, just going off our last meeting, we had 3 candidates and Mr. Giovanni could not attend the interview. So we decided to move forward, the commission decided to move forward with the 4 candidates to have a meet and greet tonight and an interview tomorrow. Since then, Giovanni is dropped off, has decided to withdraw his name. We received an email from Mr. Jones withdrawing his names. And we received an email a few days ago from Lisa, what's her last name? Nichols, withdrawing. And that just left one candidate. Nikki Austin Ship is the only candidate for the position. Today, we received an email from Lisa Nichols requesting to be considered again for the position. So that would give us 2 persons, Lisa Nichols and Nikki Austin Ship, for the position. Going by the schedule that is set so far, there will be an interview tomorrow of Lisa Nichols and Nikki Austin Ship, with a decision being made tomorrow. And that's where we stand right now.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to reflect on the record. It's Lisa Nicholas, not Nichols.
Thank you. So, Attorney Smith, what are you looking for?
We're looking for direction to proceed forward. So far, this council has voted to have interviews tomorrow with 4 people. Those interviews tomorrow will be with 2 people. And according to this council schedule, is the interviews tomorrow with the 2 persons and decision made tomorrow night amongst those 2 persons. And that's the direction that this council has given staff thus far.
Okay. Do we want to take public comments and then go into the discussion? Okay. Public comment cards?
Karen Bowman, followed by Mary Bram.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to make a comment about today with the executive director for the CRA. I wanted to make a comment as a person who grew up here in the community and everything. I was very impressed with Ms. Ship and the fact that she came here, she talked to us, and that she had concerns for the community. The fact that she grew up here, I felt was a great factor. and the fact that she was present to talked with us. The thing that I found very interesting about her was her background. She had a background from working in the restaurant industry to working in city government and working with developers, which I think is critical for this job. I also feel the fact that she has a vision for the future here. And something that I think that's extremely important, the fact that she has roots in the community, her family comes from here, she grew up here, such as myself. Um, Also, one other factor I felt too that was important when we met with her was the fact that she also saw the deep concern that we have as a community to keep balance between development and community. That's something that we're scared that we might lose here with the development growing as fast as it is. And she understood that balance, that we need to have development, but we also need to have roots in the community and do things in a balanced way. And so I would hope that you would consider moving forward with the action to interview her for the position and to consider her, because I think she would be a great fit for the city. Thank you.
And if you could, I'm sorry, state your name for the record, ma'am.
Karan Bowman.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman.
Mary Bram, followed by Veronique Williams.
Welcome, Ms. Brown.
Good evening, board and chair. Resident, as Ms. Graham said, she's still wearing her voting equipment. Your local government is what moves you and dictates you. Let me give a compliment to the preparers for the reception. It was the appetizers was absolutely to the point. Absolutely to the point.
It starts at 6.
So I say, as well as those that attended that over there, we say congratulations because we are more than meatballs. So you did a magnificent job there. I have 5 applications here. And out of the 5 here, I was looking to see the 5. I am a firm believer that you show up for the job. You show up for the job. That shows that interest right there. But I always say that you as a board, you all will make that decision. But one showed up, and that spoke volumes right there. Not just the volumes, but where she would like to lead as well. Now, my thing has always been with the staff. If we have someone, they must complement each other. They must build up each other so that everybody can be built up and built out. And we must have that leadership that speaks to the entire community, our children, our neighbors, whether they are on this side or on the opposite side. Because the city with this renaissance here, we have to move this city here. One way or the other, we have to move it. It has been over 30, 35 years that here has not done anything. And I can go back in my history span about this city here. We must move forward. Everybody is not going to like it, but I'm a firm believer we will never please everyone. But getting to where we need to be at, it marvels in the sight when it is good work. I was told that Ms. Nichols will perhaps be here tomorrow, as well as Ms. Ship, if that's up to you all. But she came. That speaks volumes there. She came, and not just came. A one-on-one interviews with all of us, and we shared some ideas, to let her know. If she's accepted for this job, it will not be easy, but she must stand grounded. She must stand grounded in order to meet the needs and where we need to be in this city here. So I say thank you, and you all do some great consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Veronique Williams.
Good evening. Veronique Williams, 1300 West 10th Street, born and raised in Riviera Beach. I don't know why y'all let me come off behind Miss Mary Brim, but thank you for what you said. You're amazing, and you're right about what you said. I am elated to stand here and to talk about the one candidate that did show up and did not play Casper. The one candidate, Nikki Austin Ship, that only have a heart for the city of Riviera Beach, but the love, and who wants to see expansion, who wants to see attraction, and who wants to see this city move. Um, I tell you what, I'm sitting here thinking about my son's future, and I am glad that you are one of the candidates who were in that room to tell us how you see us making the city of Riviera Beach better. Not something, and you know what needs to be done, right? You're not unfamiliar to this city. You was born here. Your parents were here. You have roots here. A majority of us in this room have roots here in the city of Riviera Beach. And I just want to say to the council that I hope that you guys realize what you have in this candidate that is here and what is going to be for tomorrow, because I'll be back with others. So, with saying that, please consider Nikki Austin Ship for the office of CRA. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that is at the end of comment cards.
Thank you. Discussion from the board?
Chair.
Ms. Miller-Anderson.
So I had a question. I know we received an email from Ms. Desir earlier about Ms. Nichols asking, can she be reconsidered? I wasn't aware she was automatically put back on the list. Is that the case, or is it up to us to figure that out? Because I thought the email said she was asking if we would.
Well, she asked to not be considered, and it was still within the window before the interviews. And then she came back today and asked to be considered again. So there wasn't a time frame for us to not consider her because the interviews hadn't happened yet. And the last movement by this board was to set the interviews with the four persons. And being that it was only two, and then she said she's out, but now she says she wants to be back in, we couldn't, as a staff, say, okay, you're out, you're out. But that would be a decision of this board whether to accept her back in. Only thing we have from her is one email saying, I'm not going to do it. And then 24 hours an email saying, okay, I'll still do it. But that was still before the interview process. So it's up to this commission to decide whether to interview her or not.
Okay, well, my position on that is if she sent it in saying that she did not want to be considered, I am hard pressed to say I would like to add her back. So that's where I stand with that.
Thank you. Additional comments from the board?
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Spears, go ahead.
Okay, as I said previously, I believe the whole process that we followed is flawed. I don't believe procurement handled this properly, or whoever was handling this did not do a good job. I believe this is one of the most important positions in the city, as important as your city manager's job. You're going to be paying very similar to that. This should have been advertised in the American Planning Association newsletter, in the Economic Development Association's newsletter. That's where you would have gotten many, many qualified people to apply for this job. I think what we ended up with was Indeed or whatever, where most people looking for jobs like this don't look. And I think that we should go out again, especially that we're down to one, maybe two people. I think we should start the process all over again. That's not to say that the person who applied may not get the job or is not qualified. I just think that we should open it up again and take a good look. Being a department head and running a staff and bringing projects out of the ground is very difficult. As you know, I did this for many, many years, and it's going to take a very special person to be able to do the projects that we have on the drawing board right now and bring them out of the ground. I just think that we should reassess the whole process and maybe start over again. I think that would make more common sense than just going with whatever we have left. And I'm not saying that anything negative about the people that are left, in the interview. I just think that it would make more sense to start the process again, and maybe the same people will apply, and maybe one of those people will get the job. I just think that we owe it to the people to go out there and do this properly. It's too important a position.
Thank you for your comments, Commissioner Spears. Mr. Evans or Ms. Desir, how many applicants did we have? Total applicants that applied for the position before we close it?
At closing, we had 52 applicants.
52. And where did we notice the job posting?
The notice was advertised by the City of Revere Beach. We also had it on the CRA's website, along with the FRA website and the National Forum for Black Public Administrators page as well.
Okay. And to that point, and I understand, Dr. Spiritus, I agree with your sentiments and concerns of where to advertise it and bringing in quality candidates and applicants, but I do believe we received a number of qualified candidates. Even with us reviewing, this individual that has remained was selected by, I believe, 3 commissioners as one of their top 5s when we reviewed the applications, in addition to being very well qualified. So I have no problem proceeding with the interviews, just to give this candidate an opportunity to be heard. Additional comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Spears, go ahead.
Okay, out of those 52 resumes, and I don't want to put anybody down, but I probably wouldn't have hired one of those people to work for the agency, let alone head the agency. And I did this for a living. And that's just my opinion. I just don't think we're being fair to the community.
So I guess to follow up on that, so there's an additional location where we should advertise, Dr. Spears?
Yes.
Okay, and that was where?
The American Planning Association newsletters. And the Economic Development, they have a number of associations. It should go to their associations as well.
Additional comments from the board?
Chair.
Commissioner Lanier?
Yeah, hi. I'd like to know why the individuals initially, there were 5 and then we got to 4 and then we got to 3. Then what has happened during that time for us to get to 1 and then somebody come back and say, I wanted to actually do this. What, did they give a reason why? Mr. Evans, Scott Evans.
I believe they just sent in a very limited email that just says they're withdrawing from the process.
So they didn't give a reason why.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mrs. Zare.
They did provide explanation as to why they were withdrawing. The first candidate that withdrew his resume, he had found another opportunity that he accepted. Then I had another candidate who had a work conflict. They are currently in a conference that they're leading and they wouldn't be able to attend tonight or tomorrow night. There was another candidate who just was not satisfied with the results of the board and their decisions and just thought there were other ulterior motives behind the board with the candidates that they were going to choose. And the final candidate had an issue with relocation, but she's the one that came back and said that that would not be a problem for her, and that is why she wanted to come back on.
I see. Well, I'm going to have to agree with my colleague, Mr. Spiritus, because this process, and there's no slight to Mrs. Lisa at all. I think she's an excellent candidate. But I think that what has happened is that, even with that first meeting we had, we did not know that people had dropped out. And then one person, was going to be added in. I just think the process has been up and down where it appears that there may be some other motive. So I don't like that appearance. And for good Lord, that does not happen or has not happened. It's just to say that that's the appearance that it's giving. So I certainly would like to revisit the issue of going back out. It would be fair to all parties involved.
Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm agonizing right now because it seems like we're in August. In June, I was saying the same thing to my board. The month of May, City Manager Jonathan Evans tendered his resignation. Well, Executive Director Jonathan Evans tendered his resignation with the effective date being in July. And I was literally set to fly out of the country and I was not able to attend the meeting, but I watched it as soon as I got internet service. And I'm sitting here saying to myself, how is it that we allow this process to go where not one member at that time, and four of the four members that were here, questioned anything about the process that was going forward? In June, I came back and I said, members, I really am vehemently opposed to a process where we have staff members, we have people who have never spent one night in the city of Riviera Beach can decide who's going to be the executive director. And I urged the members in that June CRA meeting to reconsider this process. And I was not on the prevailing side. I didn't have the ability to bring this back up. But, I can remember specifically the board chose not to take any action. And, good, bad, or indifferent, I have to respect the decision of the board. But I got to tell you, it's very ironic and almost hypocritical, I would say, to see people saying that they don't want to toss out the process. Because if that was true, right, we set up here and selected 5 candidates. And I think everybody, at least 5, right? Perhaps somebody even offered up 6. But, when the process was flawed, and I even pointed out to the members in a very spirited and lively discussion with former CRA Executive Director about the process and how it did not work, I was the Lone Ranger. But now I'm sitting here seeing half my body, or half the board at least, essentially saying, let's start over. But I was hoping that energy was there a couple months ago when, we decided. But, in the spirit of having a backbone, I would say let's be true to what we said, right? We just went through this process. God knows this is the worst time of year for us because we meet so much. I mean, we're here 4 days this week. But I think it shows bad faith. Again, I mean, the suggestion that Ms. Desir said that one of the candidates perhaps thought there was ulterior motives. I don't know that you restore any kind of confidence if we're going to turn around and decide right now that we're going to scrap the process. Certainly, it seems like deja vu in 2020 when we decided that we were going to interview, was it 5 or 6 candidates? And then when we concluded the interviews, there was a mysterious motion from someone that wasn't even in the room to now throw out the process. Now with everybody here, seemingly when we don't get our choice, we want to throw out the process. I'm of the belief, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. I think we have to be true and show good faith because, now what I will say is this. Board members, everybody has a life, and I can't emphasize that enough. We seen it last week when we had conflicts with the initial, I think it was virtually scheduled interviews where folks had conflicts. And I can understand that. Nobody's life surrounds around what may happen or some hope or possibility of something that is remote. So I'm okay with Ms. Nichols. And that's my question. Did we already prepare travel arrangements for her?
She, no, but she can drive here and the reimbursements would have taken place after she'd left.
So was that the expectation for those that weren't able to drive?
No, travel arrangements would have been provided to everyone. She was going to drive here or take the train, but we would have reimbursed her.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I like not to see this gets reset because we're going to find ourselves probably back in here again. And, considering, I don't want to make this like our back is against the wall, but I think Mr. Scott Evans was clear on his desires as to how long he wanted to be in this role. So if we essentially reset this process again, we're talking about 3 months at least. And we start a new fiscal year in just 35 days? So yeah, that's where I'm at. board members. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Spears.
In all due respect to my colleague, I did question the process at the meeting, previous meetings that we've had. Both times I questioned the process and the, where we did the advertising. So that was on the record. Thank you.
Okay. Additional comments from the board? So board, the request from our staff was to determine how we will proceed, if we'd like to proceed with interviews. And also if we'd like, first, if we'd like to proceed with adding Miss Lisa Nichols to the interview for tomorrow, and if we'd like to proceed at all with interviews.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Spears?
I'd like to make a motion that we start the process again for an executive director.
Motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Discussion. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
No.
Chair Lawson.
No.
That vote doesn't pass with Miller Anderson, Vice Chair McCoy, and Chair Lawson dissenting.
Do we have additional motions, discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Spiritus?
I'd like to make a motion that we interview both candidates, not just one.
Second for discussion.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
So, Commissioner Dr. Spiritus, I don't disagree with it, but you know, I'm where Mr. Smith was. We technically did not eliminate the candidate, right? So, you know, kind of like a ping pong type thing. You know, I don't think we explicitly excluded her, and I don't think, you know, for all intents and purposes, that we need to vote to actually put her back in. I think she's still in unless the board says otherwise.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Spiritus?
Well, based on what council said, that it was up to us whether we wanted to interview both candidates. So I just made the motion for us to interview both candidates.
Fair enough.
Attorney Smith, question and follow-up. What was noticed for tomorrow's meeting in regards to interviews?
What was noticed was the interview for the 4 candidates for tomorrow.
Looking at the agenda, I only see one resume posted for tomorrow's agenda.
Yes, after receiving from Ms. Nichols, we did not post her resume, but now that she sent an email saying that she would like to be considered again, we'd add her again and add the resume.
No problem. So we posted for 4. We posted the agenda item with 1 resume, and if we proceed with both interviews, we would just add her resume to the backup.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just for clarity for the board and for the public. Additional discussion? The motion on the table is for interviewing both candidates tomorrow. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Lanier,
Yes.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
No.
That vote passes with Commissioner Lanier and Chair Lawson dissenting.
Thank you. So the pleasure of the board, Attorney Smith. I'm sorry. If
I'm
you could
sorry.
repeat the.
I'm sorry. That vote passes with Commissioner Miller Anderson and Chair Lawson dissenting.
Thank you. Attorney Smith, so the pleasure of the board is to interview both candidates
Yes, sir.
for tomorrow's interview.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that the travel arrangements will be reimbursed to the candidates as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Before we move on,
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
so we
You're
talked
recognized.
about this, and please forgive me if I don't recall. So did we have or lay out rules of engagement? Because I think our agenda is silent on it, and I want to make sure that we at least understand what our expectation is tomorrow. I know Commissioner Miller Anderson brought up the idea of uniform questions. I mean, the meetings and days start running together, so I can't even remember exactly what the conversation was at the Ambassador Center. But before we move on to the budget item, can we kind of have a discussion about this?
I wouldn't be in agreement, Commissioner McCoy. Colleagues, I know we mentioned previously that there were some questions provided by staff that we would each identify a question to ask and ask the same questions, and then following that, ask additional questions. Time frame, how long are our interviews going to last? Are we okay with an hour or is 30 minutes?
I'm sorry.
We talked about an hour. We talked about 30 minutes previously. Are we okay with an hour? Hours up to an hour?
I would say 45 minutes per person.
45 minutes, an hour. Let's set the time frame and then also the questions. So time frame, we have one recommendation for an hour, one for 45. Additional comments? I'm okay with an hour interview, up to an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Commissioner Spears.
Up to an hour is fine with me.
Okay. Commissioner McCoy.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm ready for the next part.
The next phase. So we got the hour interview for each interview.
Wait, somebody just said up to. Now, what are we gonna do? An hour? Because I'm telling you,
up to, which could be 20, 30 minutes, which could be up to.
I don't
an
know,
hour.
because my battery seems to be going dead and it's ticking a little slow. So I just don't want to be here
Up to an hour,
and a
Commissioner.
half on one person.
Up to an hour. And the reason I wanted to set the time first is because that'll help determine the amount of questions and how much time we actually have for each commissioner. So
Thank
next question is the questions that we want to ask and what does that procedure look like? So if we're going to go up to an hour, each commissioner essentially, including our mayor, would have, without our mayor, 20 minutes in regards to Q&A, questions, dialogue, discussion.
Yeah, but
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
I would hope it wouldn't be just so scripted like that. I would hope that we have an opportunity to have some, the candidate can have some actual just open dialogue about their, I think the qualifications we see, their vision, their experience, what they think is potentially barriers or challenges to where we are. I want to make sure that we're not coming in here reading exact questions and then when they finish, it's like we get one word responses and that sort of thing. I want it to be a fluid conversation. So I would hope it's not bifurcated by 20 minutes each.
I'm sorry, and that time was completely off. It's actually only about 12 minutes each with the 5 commissioners. But to your point, I just wouldn't want any commissioner to monopolize all of the time and then not allow for each commissioner to
Nobody's
have
going
discussion.
to do that but you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner, we really have to understand who talks the most on this board. Let's be crystal clear about who asks the questions. Continuing with that, Dr. Spiritus has stated he's done this before, so he may have some more eloquent questions to ask. Commissioner McCoy, you're engaged and in tune with all of your questions and concerns, and you want to follow up and follow up and follow up. So to that point, let's just set a precedent so each of us can have a fair amount of time to have discussion. And if that leads to a point where we want additional time, or you'd like to actually monopolize some of the other time from additional commissioner, that's an option as well. But in all fairness, I think we should set a clear time for each commissioner to ask their question.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Miller-Anderson.
So I think we said that that list of questions that we had, we would pick 2 each. Well, that was based on 4 people, I think. But anyway, pick off the list and then we could come up with our own questions, but whatever the question was, we would have to ask that specifically to both of the candidates. And then I think Dr. Spiritus said if there was a question that he wanted to ask a little more about based on their resume or something like that, that may just be pertinent to that person. But I think we want to be fair and make sure that we ask the same question so that one is not given a leg up over the other.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Spiritus.
I hate to go back, but we narrowed it down to 5 people. But if we thought that there was going to be people dropping out, we may have picked other people that applied for this job. Should we not give ourselves the opportunity to go back and look at those 52 resumes and maybe pick some additional people to be in the final 5?
That again is the pleasure of the board, but in my opinion, I believe we are going to move forward with the 2 applicants for interviews. and proceed, but it's the pleasure of the board if we want to add additional applicants out of the 51 applications. And then we would have to reset. Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Point of order
Go ahead, sir.
on procedural grounds.
Your point is recognized. Go ahead. State your point.
We've already resolved that issue.
Correct.
So, as much as I respect Commissioner Spirit's perspective, I think that item has been settled. Now, unless there's a reconsideration on someone on the prevailing side, I don't think that even warrants a discussion or even indulgence.
Your point is recognized, and I agree with you, Commissioner McCoy. We have stated and set the precedence for tomorrow's interviews of the two candidates.
Sure.
Commissioner Spiritus.
In all due respect, we never settled anything. We narrowed it down to 5 people. And those 5 people have now changed. And we were supposed to pick 5 people to be interviewed for this position. That's what we agreed to the night that we picked 5 people. We never said that we weren't going to go back and re-look at this if people dropped out. That was never discussed and never decided.
And to that point of order, Commissioner Spiritus, we did actually make a decision just a few moments ago to move forward with 2 candidates' interviews for tomorrow. So being that we've recognized that point of order, that takes precedence over the previous motion that was made a few weeks ago. Commissioners?
I respectfully disagree, but you're entitled to your opinion. Thank you.
It's simple Robert's rule, sir. We took a motion 3 weeks ago and we made a motion 3 minutes ago.
We made a motion with Robert's rules to interview 5 people.
And 3 minutes ago, we made a motion to interview 2.
We had a motion to add someone onto the interview for tomorrow.
If we could go ahead and proceed with the discussion of 2 interviews for tomorrow. We're having, not an addition, we're actually having the 2 candidates that we have. So I believe we've already disposed of that, but if there's any additional discussion, Commissioner Lanier.
To ask, how does that work? You have 2 individuals. Do you interview them together? Do you put one in a room? How do you do that?
Well, Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCoy.
so if I can see my friend down here
I was asking the
on the north end,
attorney. I'm not finished. I'm asking the attorney.
I was recognized by the chair, so unless he's gonna tell me that I don't have the floor.
I wasn't sure if there was a question from staff or who, Commissioner Lanier. I did go ahead, Commissioner Lanier.
Yes, I was asking the staff. I wouldn't ask one of y'all. I'm asking the staff about the process.
And Commissioner McCoy, if we can't hear from our attorney and then have you follow up, immediately follow up.
The process is
Attorney
a
Smith,
public.
go ahead.
The process is a public process, councilperson. So both candidates can be in the same room and can watch the other's interview. There's no way to separate someone from a public process, being that the entire public is allowed in the room while someone's being interviewed.
Thank you, Commissioner Lanier. Commissioner McCoy, you want to follow up?
No, I just wanted to kind of go with my colleague, Dr. Spiritus, when we had the discussion about sequestration. So I think we can certainly request that a party or the other candidate be sequestered as opposed to being segregated. So I think that's certainly an option. I mean, I think it's not unheard of, and that's been the process in which we've done many competitive solicitations and interviews in the past. So I think sequestration is the word.
Right.
Thank you,
Chair?
Commissioner. Commissioner Spiritus.
Right, I agree. It's either sequestered or secluded. I didn't say segregated. So
I apologize.
I agree that we should request that that person not be in the same room. I don't see how it could be fair for one person to hear the questions and the other person's answers and then have the other person get up there and hear the questions again and know the answers that the other person already gave. I think it's best that we not have them both in the room at the same time, so we can request that. But I don't see how it could be fair because who goes first? Who decides who goes first?
And to that point, I agree. We've had this discussion in the past where we've had candidates monitoring or watching interviews. And I'm not sure, are we going to steal their phone? Are we going to lock them in the room, give them water? What are we going to do?
There's
Go ahead,
no way
Attorney Smith,
legally,
you recognize.
under Florida statutes, the person can sit in the interview and watch the other because it is a public meeting and you're conducting public business. Now, you can request that a candidate not sit in the room or not monitor the other, but you can't legally require someone not to be in the room during the interview.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yeah, I was just gonna reiterate, let's just see if we can request and perhaps maybe even a coin toss to decide who goes first. I don't know. I want it to be fair though. I think, that's the least we can try to be is fair.
I would agree if we can keep it fair with a potential coin toss and requesting that the candidates sit in separate rooms. We can't demand it or require it, but if we can request it, we'll go from there. Are we okay with that, commissioners?
Yes.
Okay. Still, time.
No.
Who had a question? I'm sorry.
Right.
Commissioner Miller Anderson.
So like you said, if we each do the 2 questions, that's only 12 minutes. So
But
possibly
it depends on
do-
their response as well. How long are we giving the candidate to respond? And as my colleague said, and it was in jest earlier, but to that point, Commissioner McCoy stated that we want to have clear dialogue discussion, be able to open and ask some clear questions, whether it's resume related or some of the structured questions. So we want to maybe set a precedence on time with each commissioner and then go from that stance to where it would be about 10 minutes, each commissioner allowing for them with the 50-minute totals and then having additional time. So a bare minimum of allowing each commissioner to have equal time with the candidate. Because there may be one answer that we have a follow-up. We may see something in the resume. We may have an additional question that's responded to after the interviewee has made a comment or a conversation. So we just want to be clear and fair with all of the colleagues here on the board and then make sure that we can get all of our questions answered so everybody can be comfortable if we decide to move forward, if we decide to hire an applicant, or if we decide to go back out.
And how do you make sure each are being asked the same type of question, being fair across the board in that respect?
So that was a question we addressed in the previous board, and I'm just going to address it based upon the recommendation of Dr. Spiritus. He may see something in a resume
Right.
that pertains differently to each candidate. So, Attorney Smith, Ms. Miller Anderson's concern was, or question was about fair line of questioning.
Well, there's no, what was recommended was that if you ask an individual council person, if you ask a question of the one candidate, you try and ask the same question of the other candidate to make it fair. But there's not a procedure or a list of questions that you can or can't ask. As was mentioned, Dr. Spiritus may have a question for one candidate based on her resume and not for the other. But if you're asking of the questions that were passed out at the last meeting, if you ask a question of one candidate, we ask it that you ask it of the other candidate.
Commissioner Miller Anderson, you okay with that? Commissioner.
I thought that we were gonna,
Commissioner Lanier.
I thought we had a question like 10 or 11 questions and that we would pick a question, pick 2 questions, and then we had one question to follow up with, but it could be our own question. So that would be, fair in a sense. The same 2 questions will be asked of each person, of each council person, commissioner, and then we ask one of our own.
And if we can, Attorney Smith, just state for the record, in all fairness and clarity, everyone on this board may or may not have hired someone previously, but just what questions would be off limits in an interview setting, just to make sure that's on the record. Because a question on our own and going off may determine that it be outside of the realm of what can be asked.
Yes, I'll send out a memo tonight to the commissioners as to subject matters and types of questions. I'd prepared one for you. If that's the pleasure, I'll send it out tonight. But it's basically questions to get towards personal information. Asking someone's religion or even getting to their familial relationships, if they're married, if they're not, if they have kids, if they're not, if they're pregnant, if they're not, those type questions that would get into personal information that could be determined as discriminatory. But I can send out a memo this evening to the council person as to areas to stay away from.
So board members, our interview up to at least 10 minutes for each commissioner, and then additional 10 minutes of open discussion. If a commissioner doesn't have any additional follow-up questions after their 10 minutes, I'm assuming that time can be allotted to other commissioners to ask additional follow-ups. We okay with that? Mr. Zier, be ready with your stopwatch tomorrow. We're going to need it. Thank you, ma'am. Additional comments or questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Evans. I'm sorry, Mr. Zier, 7A? And actually, what time is it now? 7:20. How many public comment cards do we have, Mr. Zier?
Mr. Chair, we have 3 comment cards.
Okay, board members, are we okay with starting public comment now? It's prior to 7:30, so we will go into it, and we'll keep public comment open until 7:30 or until we're done with public comments. Public comment shall begin at 7:30 unless there's no further business of the city council, which in the event it shall begin sooner. In addition, if an item is being considered at 7:30, then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item is concluded. Be reminded that the CRA Board of Commissioners has adopted rules of decorum governing public comment during official meetings, which is posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any rules are not adhered to, the commission chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting or the building. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Madam Clerk, public comment, please.
Karen Bowman, followed by Mary Brown. Okay. Mary Brown, followed by Scott Harris.
Mayor Brown, to the chair and to the board. It is not always to each individual liking. It is what's best that cooperates, that incorporates each and every one of us. I said that it was entirely up to you, board. So the majority, whatever the majority is, it rules. You will proceed tomorrow. This procedure here was done, and I do believe that it was done in good faith. If those decide to fly around the country that did not think that this job was important, well, it wasn't important. Other circumstances, the other one withdrawn and he got another job. I say accomplishments there. The others, they may have had their own reasoning, but proceeding in the directions that was given, it is nothing wrong here. You have 2 magnificent candidates here, but you, as always, will make that decision. The connector, developer, the strategic technology planning, TEDx speaker, innovator, entrepreneur, philanthropist, corporate America, charitable affairs, government experience. Most recently, creating luncheon and serving as founder and managing principal of the NSA advisory group. That's important. That's a firm. That's what you're going to get from Ms. Ship. I think you all included Ms. Nicholson in there too. So out of fairness for the general public, public, I always like to give you a little something so that you can watch this tomorrow or even come in and be a participator and not a spectator, because it's so often we have so many in our ears and we are constantly being misled. And like I say, with this voting, these candidates do not play with Ms. Brown. They know Ms. Brown and they know how she works. And Ms. Brown would get everybody else to work because this is your government and your government must work for you. Ms. Nichols, please know that I have a unique blend of employment experience, which began in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, where I was employed as a legislative editor. During my 12-year tenure with the Pennsylvania House, I ascended through the ranks, serving in communications and ultimately legislative and policy research and analysis. This and other employment experience, particularly in the municipal government level, have boosted my skills and not only the practice of economic and development. So you do have it here. Whether or not it's women's or not, we must get past that. Thank you.
Any comments, ma'am?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott here. What's Lewis?
Welcome, Mr. Lewis.
Yes, Scott Lewis. Two topics you all have heard me talk about. It was related to the director position, the budget, the CRA overall. I'm still standing here asking about leadership and water. And, you know, I've only heard part of the history. I've lived here my whole life, but I understand the manager was fired 8 years ago because there were water quality issues. And today, what's our biggest problem? Water. 8 years later. And in that time, you got a 55 million in parks rushed, that was pushed through after many meetings at night, a lot of effort by the staff. You got a $25 million fire station before water. You got a police station, 35 million before water. And I looked over the budget and I just have to relay, you know, I know how badly you all want affordable housing, but please think about what you're doing. East of Broadway, and I sat in a planning meeting across the bridge, and there were two African Americans, one sitting on each side of me, and they both said, we don't need more affordable housing. And I'm telling you, you need unaffordable housing east of Broadway, because that's how you're going to finance the future. And if you could put $1.6 million cheapest condos in the Marina project, or up here in wherever else you're doing east of Broadway, I heard Viking, they were pushing them for affordable housing. At $1.6 million, you got room for increment later to do all the affordable housing you want. But that's where you build your tax base, the increment. It isn't from giving the money up front to put it out west. You got to get your infrastructure. And you ask the police, the fire, the parks, ask the people in general, do they care more about water, or do they care about all those other new taxes that are coming at them soon? Because believe me, landlords are going to pass through their taxes and all the insurance costs and everything else, and people on fixed income out west are going to have trouble. And you are contributing to that trouble by not giving them quality water and spending their tax dollars. $100 million so far, and I hear tonight you're up to 349 with the water plant. I don't know how you're planning to do this. I've asked 3 times. Mr. Spiritus has asked at least twice in public meetings. There's still no answer. Where is this money coming from? And last time I spoke, I said, go to Palm Beach County, buy their water. Take the 55 million in bond revenue and put that in fixing our pipes that are there underground now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. We'll leave public comment open until 7:30. Madam Clerk, 7A.
7A, adoption of budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Mr. Chair, we have one comment card.
Stevens.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Before you this evening is resolution to propose to adopt the budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. This budget, per our workshop, was put together, developed to meet the needs of the existing approved CRA's projects, programs, and it was developed in order to provide flexibility for the new executive director and for the board to be able to support them in implementing their agenda as we move forward in the new year. I do have a presentation. The proposed schedule was we held a workshop on August 15th. And then tonight before you is review and adoption of our tentative budget. It is tentative, of course, because it relies upon approval of the millage rates by Palm Beach County and by the city of Riviera Beach for which it's based. And we do have a reserve date if the board wishes to make additional changes this evening to bring back revisions to the budget. Again, our revenue went up approximately $1 million from last year for total projected revenue towards next year's expenditures of about approximately $18 million. As a CRA, we're required to budget all funds from the previous year and the coming year, which we do every year. That's how we get our combined revenue of 18 million. Our significant expenditure is
Chair.
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Scott Evans, can you go back to the carryover amount? Okay, so if I can, Mr. Chair, so I want to understand how we're going to do this because I want to ask questions about specific things. Am I able to stop him mid presentation?
Yes, commissioners, we're gonna go through, and if you have a question that comes up, please just let us know. Commissioner McCoy, you're recognized.
Thank you. So I think this is probably right along the questions that I was asking the auditor. So at what point, Mr. Scott Evans, and I'm certainly not holding this to you, but you know, in a perfect situation, would the board know we're carrying over $4 million of CRA dollars, which, you know, members, let's think about this, that we're carrying over this amount of money that has not been used towards development efforts. We certainly can use it to buy down additional debt or principal payments or anything like that. But I'm just really agonizing with levying taxes and we're not using the monies for the purpose of this, of why we meet here every month. So, you know, at what point, and I'm speaking prospectively, like how can we be abreast of what the current operating status is of the CRA and how we're doing financially, as opposed to only seeing this conversation once a year? And I know certainly someone can say we can do the reports, but there has to be more to it than just, you know, we're carrying over this dollar amount every single year and no one's done anything. Now, are these dollars that have been set aside and pledged for capital projects, or these are operating dollars?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
These are not capital project. But they are project funds that might have been committed for various grant programs. Each year when the board approves a new grant program, those dollars are reserved for those applicants. For one example, we have about 20 applicants in the home program who have applied and are being processed for either new mortgage grants or improvements for repairs to their house. So that's an example of funds that are encumbered in the projects and programs that are carried over. In preparation for this budget, I did look around at other CRAs. They all have similar carryovers. In this particular year, our number has gone up, but they all are required that. It's as part of the state statute, all dollars must be in the trust fund must be applied in the budget for redevelopment purposes. So even the dollars that are unspent must have to be carried over into the next year's budget. In this case, there would also be, per your other question, various line items in the CRA budget that we didn't expend all of the dollars, or we didn't project to expend all the dollars. So that's the other portion of the carryover. For example, if there's a line item that we had budgeted 100,000 for and our expenditures came in at 90,000, then that difference we would be required to add to the carryover for the next year, since the CRA is not allowed to have, I guess, savings.
Follow up.
Mr. McCoy, you're recognized.
So, Mr. Evans, I know at some point we were doing an annual report that actually spoke to the actual projects. I don't recall it really saying a whole lot in terms of where we are financially, but I've not seen that certainly in the last year and a half, perhaps even 2 years. Are you familiar with where we are on that, if we've stopped that as an agency?
Mr. Chair?
You recognize Mr. Evans.
Yes, we've completed the annual report and the other reporting per the requirements with the state. You had also related to tracking expenditures over time. In our quarterly reports that we published this year, we provided expenditure tracking on a project-by-project basis. Going forward in this year, if the board wanted to sort of monitor the spending as we go, the quarterly report could be amended. Instead of doing specific projects, it could be just a line-by-line item for all all of the various items in your budget, tracking the expenditure as we proceed throughout the year. So look at that document.
Okay, I just don't recall seeing it. I remember specifically we had actual physical copies. So you're saying it was sent out, the annual report was sent out, or I'm sorry, the quarterly report was sent out electronically?
Yes.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Thank you,
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Spears, you're recognized.
As my colleague said, I have some concerns when we carry over $4 million. Mr. Evans, can you tell me what is unencumbered in that $4 million?
Mr. Chair, I would have to do, it's probably the accumulation of about 60
Chair,
line items.
Mr. Chair, you got to change your microphone. It's very staticky. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, if you could repeat what you said, because all the
Yeah.
mics are kind of staticky now.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's accumulation of about 60 different line items. So if the board wanted to look at this, that we would have.
Hold on one moment, Mr. Evans. Is Walter here or in the building? 'Cause, well, even mine is starting to get staticky now. I'm not sure if it's the sound or if it's the batteries or what's going on. There we go. Mr. Evans, if you can make sure the base is pushed in, pull it out, push it back in. I just reset mine. All right, let's see how we sound with that. Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
Is that clearer? I can try to speak louder.
Thank you.
We would have to email that to the board. I would have to do the research because it's an accumulation of about 60 different line items.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Dr. Spears, you're recognized.
So my concern is leaving money and carrying it over year to year when we have many, many projects in the communities that we could be using this money for. I really think that we have to think real hard about carrying money over and not bringing projects to the communities. And as I say often enough, results you can see. You know, people don't want to just know that we have money in a bank account. They want to see projects in their community. We have infrastructure issues. We have many, many issues. And I think that we have to start spending the money rather than banking the money.
Thank you, Dr. Spears. And I echo those sentiments, Mr. Evans, and just those carryovers. And I know you addressed that other CRA districts are carrying over funds, but my concern is that I'm seeing a lot of development of addressing some slum blight and infrastructure in these other CRAs, but I'm not seeing that same thing here. So even though we're carrying over the funds comparable, they've addressed a lot of the issues that we want to address here. So I'd rather put those dollars back into the community and really focus on some of the infrastructure needs, land acquisitions, programming, but most importantly, just the slum blight. Job creation, of course, business attraction, but infrastructure. We've talked about that previously. I want to make a conscious effort, and the CRA over the years has done that with eliminating some of the programming and events and activities and focusing on affordable housing and workforce housing. But I heard one of our speakers echo the sentiments of infrastructure, water, everything that we can to help offset the overall cost of the city, especially in our downtown corridor. Creating the downtown corridor, but also we have to address the infrastructure that's in the downtown corridor to be able to bring and attract the businesses down there. So everything down on our intercoastal, we want to start looking at those roads. We want to bury those electrical lines and make sure everything is done. But the 4 million carryover could be poured back into the community immediately. So I'd like to see that as well moving forward.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
I do have some of the large line items. I did locate that if you want me to just list them so you can get an example.
If you could, to please list some of the items unencumbered.
So we the event center refresh is underway. So that's an example of a project that's underway. So that's $1,000 that has not yet been deployed that we would carry over. We have $232,000 from commercial grants that we're carrying over from the previous year. The signage program has $188,000 in it. We didn't propose to put any new money in this current year, so that would be carried over into the next year. The reclaim program, $399,550 of project funds that have been assigned to potential applicants, but they're still in the review process. We have $400,000 in the Renaissance program, which is the mortgage assistance.
If you could elaborate, that 400,000 is in the Renaissance. Has that been assigned to home buyers? That's the home buying process, or is that the revitalization?
The home buying.
So have those dollars been assigned to home buyers, or are those dollars just waiting for home buyers to be brought in?
We have applicant pool that we're continuing to process. So I couldn't say every dollar. Yes, those dollars are encumbered by those who are working on bringing through the process.
Thanks, sir.
Those were the large line items.
To that dollar amount, that only equated to about 1.2. So we still have about 3 million remaining. And I'm sure they're itemized throughout. And if you can send that out to us, because even if we have those budgeted items that were allocated to certain items, that $3 million still is too large of a 24% of our total TIF shouldn't be carried over and not put back into the community. So I'm sorry, but go ahead, Dr. Freitas.
Oh, no, I agree. It was a little over $1 million, and I believe that we should put that money back into the community.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Lanier?
Yes, I agree with that, back into the community, but also paying debt is still over the Ocean Mall, the city of Riviera Beach, and we need to pay our bills. So we need to be able to look at some of that funding to pay down our debt, because of course, eventually we want to get to the point where we get more in terms of doing more in the community and more development. But if we pay down the debt that we have now, we'll be able to do that.
Go ahead, Mr. Evans. Thank you.
Our debt service for the proposed coming year is approximately $4.1 million. At the previous budget workshop, I did point out that next year this number will down to 2.8, so there will be an opportunity for the board to consider new capital projects in the coming fall. Based on our discussions at the board workshop, I want to talk through some of the changes that have been made from the budget that was presented during the workshop. We have increased the neighborhood reclaim program from $400,000 to $500,000. This is the home improvements that we've been making to single-family homeowners within our neighborhoods to help them improve their properties. CRA capital projects, $500,000 has been added to neighborhood improvements. This came from the line item for Event Center Build-Out Reserve. Future program funding. Board feedback at that time was to include these future programming fundings that were identified to bring back for future implementation. So again, they are included, but the direction from the board at the workshop was to partner with other organizations to provide and extend proven assistance to new and existing local small business. So we'll make sure that when we bring these back for implementation of these dollars, that we include those partnerships with Palm Beach County and other similar organizations who are already engaged in small business support. Oh, I'm sorry.
Chair,
Commissioner Lanier, go ahead.
I was going to ask, remember we were talking about the last meeting about the micro business build out we found here, and we wanted to find out, did they say that? Some information about that, Mr. Evans?
Is that coming up in the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the future project funding, we've provided now a total of $900,000 for neighborhood infrastructure in the proposed budget. This includes the neighborhoods that are in the CRA, are Lakeview Park, Park Manor, Inlet City, and Riviera Beach Heights. And again, referenced, we have proposed specific funding for neighborhood signage, beautification, landscaping, that could be applied anywhere in the CRA for $140,000.
Hold on, Mr. Evans. Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Evans, so the neighborhood infrastructure for $900,000, you obviously work with either Mr. Treviso or Mr. Jonathan Evans as to identifying what's going to be in their capital plan. in terms of these infrastructure projects?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Evans?
I have been in discussions with the city related to that. Ultimately, they have tens of millions of dollars in improvements that are needed in our neighborhoods. So the expenditure of these funds will require the board to consider both what the neighborhoods are requesting and then prioritize those expenditures. The 900,000 would need to be determined how you would want to deploy that, because it certainly will not, will only assist in some of those infrastructure projects since the need is great across the entire city.
Sure, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner, you
So,
recognize.
I understand that, and it certainly won't go far. But I'm not okay with us putting this in the budget if we don't have concurrence by the city. I mean, we wouldn't be doing anything but repeating the same cycle of $1 million sitting. I mean, it's great that we can set aside, but I want to be sure that this is in the capital plan. I mean, obviously we can approve this as it is, but we certainly can come back and do some sort of amendment to our budget or capital plan for the CRA if it's not in the budget. I just don't want to carry dollars, and I certainly know it's needed. But if the city isn't doing it, I mean, we need to either encourage them or make sure that this is, top priority, because we'll be repeating the same thing again.
That was, echo those sentiments.
I'm sorry, I was recognized by the chairperson.
Commissioner McCoy, finish your statements. I'm sorry.
I'm finished, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I want to echo those sentiments from my colleague on the far end. The infrastructure with the minimal amount of 900,000 is not going to really address those 4 neighborhoods the way we need to. But we also had about 3 million that rolled over. So it's identifying what we're going to do from our CRA to address infrastructure and not continue to roll those funds over. So it's just coming up with a strategy, colleagues, of how we can have staff get that moving. Because those 3 million coupled with that 9 million could definitely take care of some neighborhoods in Park Manor, in Lakeview, and in the Heights, in Inlet City. So what could we do realistically with that rollover dollars, that infrastructure dollars? Because we've increased it, but it looks like it's just going to be an additional add-on to whatever the city's doing. And waiting on the city to address the roads in our CRA is not going to address the sum and blight that we have, because we only have, 18 years left in our CRA? So, Mr. Evans, go ahead.
2039, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So, Commissioner Spiritus.
Mr. Evans, where did the 900,000 come from?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, we had proposed $400,000 for neighborhood infrastructure in the budget workshop, and the board added an additional $500,000 through comments made related to modifying the capital plan to add 500 to the 400.
So is this, Mr. Chair? So does this include the money that Related was expecting from their 1.5 million?
Mr. Chair?
You recognize Mr. Evans?
No, these dollars are separate from the capital budget.
So, Mr. Chair?
You recognize?
So then that would give you 1.8 million. Based on the contract, I know that you were supposed to go back to council and discuss that. We had a discussion about this. When you look at the contract, if Related gets money from another source, they're only entitled to 640,000 as opposed to 1.5 million. So that would be an additional 900,000 for infrastructure. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans?
Yes, we are carrying in our budget $900,000, which is a grant for the Element 8 project. As a part of that contract, it says if they obtain other grant funds, which reduce the cost of the project, that those funds are then reduced, not on a one-to-one basis, but they do reduce the amount of grant that the CRA is required to provide. So although the budget includes 900,000, which is the amount in the contract, we have initiated a conversation with them to do that calculation with Bryant Miller, all of our attorneys, and their development team. So that some of those dollars could become available to the board for redeployment in this coming year.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Spiritus.
So, I mean, I don't think you really need a group of attorneys reviewing this. It was in pretty simple language. in the contract that if they received any funding from other sources, the price goes down to $640 for the city. And we know that Related received a substantial amount of money in workforce housing from the county, a substantial amount of money from the state for the Live Local, and they also received federal tax credits. So clearly, they received funds from other sources. So I believe that the 640 number is the right number and not the 1.5. But, Mr. Chair, can I continue speaking on another matter?
Before we switch matters, I did have a follow-up with that because those funds would be reallocated or would be assigned back to the CRA, so they could be allocated accordingly anywhere in the budget, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I know Dr. Spirit has mentioned that we would have it for infrastructure, which I would agree. I'd want it to go back into infrastructure, but that's of course the pleasure of the board. Before we move on, Commissioner McCoy, did you have a comment on this item that we were addressing? You had made a comment earlier.
I said my piece. I'm really
Yes, sir.
interested to hear Commissioner
Yes,
Spears.
sir. Thank you. Commissioner Spears, continue. You're recognized.
Yeah, so now on another matter, I know there's concern that $900,000 is not a lot of money for projects, so you're not going to get a big bang for your buck. But what I found historically, and other communities do this all the time, is that we leverage these funds. And usually what you do is you either use it as a local match, or you could use it to do the design, the planning and design work for infrastructure projects, which makes you shovel ready. You can put a project out to bid, which gives you the ability to go to whether it's the county, the state, or the federal government to look for infrastructure funds, which there are plenty of, especially if you are shovel ready.
Okay. Commissioner McCoy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Spears, I don't disagree with you on that. I think you're spot on, and I know we're challenged over on the city side, staffing and just being prepared for some of these projects. However, the Live Local, I don't know that that's been dispersed. Certainly the county hasn't been dispersed, and the tax credits is, those dollars aren't available yet. But I guess, I think if I'm understanding this correctly, the comprehensive agreement for element 8 requires that if they receive funding, but we would still need to carry it in our budget until the actual constructive receipt of those dollars and confirmation. Is that correct, Mr. Scott Evans?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, there's a lot. The fact that the project has commitments for grants doesn't mean that they're actually going to receive those grants. So that's why we budgeted for the 900. But we've also put them on notice that we would like to discuss those grants, the impacts to the agreement, and what that might be related to that 900,000.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Dr. Spirit, you're recognized.
Well, clearly they received a commitment in their tax credits. They received the 9% tax credits on the project from the state already, and those are federal tax credits. They've already received a commitment from the county on the workforce housing funds. I'm pretty sure the Live Local, there is a commitment already from the state. I haven't seen it, but I'm pretty sure it's there because I went to the county commission meeting where Related made it very clear that they received all of these commitments. So if they don't move forward with the project, clearly they will not be entitled to any money from us. If they do move forward with the project, clearly they're going to take this funding. So I don't know why we would be required at this point. Or maybe we can put it in escrow. I'm not sure. But I think this is something that has to be discussed further. I don't see why we would have to put it in escrow. Because if they don't do the project, they're only going to do this project if they receive these funds. They made that pretty clear at the meeting that we were at.
Yes. There's no questions from the board? Mr. Evans, if you want to continue with the presentation and continue with the presentation, I'm sorry.
Okay. We have developed a new capital project implementation that was briefly discussed at the workshop for the 5,000 square feet that is available at the Found Care site on Broadway. This is a rendering of the building that's currently under construction, and the CRA would receive 5,000 square feet on the ground floor along Broadway. In our budget, we are proposing to utilize this 5,000 square feet for one 2,000 square foot business incubator, and for the other remaining 3,000 square feet for utilization of a new CRA office combined with a CRA co-working center, small business center, which could be utilized to support small business owners, entrepreneurs, digital creatives, and home office professionals, not only providing them a productive workspace that they could utilize when needed, but also we could provide some of the business support services that we've included in the budget to try and help grow those local small businesses. This site is under construction, and this is already, and so what we would like to do is modify the design, which is underway, to change from the four spaces that we had previously envisioned to provide the one incubator space and then the co-working space, which would provide multiple opportunities for small business. This is a sample of a project that was just recently completed. This is a co-working space that was completed in Delray Beach. And this one, as you can see, had various types of different office space, including rental of a conference room. We would propose to build one small conference room, one large one, which could be shared with the with the CRA workspace. We also would have limited costs for running this co-working office, since we would have it jointly situated with our CRA office, which would already be prepared to receive guests as they come in. So we could run this as a small operation as a satellite to the new office.
Having a clear strategy with that co-working and co-op space, some of the concerns and feedback that we got from the incubator program was that we didn't have clear oversight for the co-op space. So having somebody that's going to manage, oversee that staff, that's going to provide the support for the small business development, because this is exactly what the community needs. I love the presentation and the idea of utilizing the space for multiple businesses versus just one or two benefiting. So this is an excellent option with giving the CRA and putting them back into our CRA district, the actual office. And how large of a space are we thinking with the CRA office and this co-working space? A rough estimate.
A rough estimate would be about 2,000 square feet for the CRA office and about 1,000 square feet for the co-working space, with the conference room somewhere in between those two allowances.
Okay. And then the remaining 2,000 square feet going towards where?
We would propose the remaining go towards an incubator space for a small healthy food restaurant. They will also have some outdoor space, which we'd like to activate with the patio.
I completely had heartburn when we talked about previously putting the $1 million towards budgeting for this and building this out. But this is a little bit more amenable to what we would want to see, because it's going to provide opportunity. So I would support us using this for build out, even though originally I thought Found Care was supposed to provide those funds. But being that we're utilizing co-op space, CRA office, if we could still go back, I'm not sure what the details of the contract outline, but the $1 million, it still gives me heartburn. But I do love this additional strategy for that space. Questions, comments from the colleagues?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Spirit, you recognize.
Well, as I stated at the workshop meeting, I think this is a great use of the building, and especially since it's already off the tax rolls. This is a win-win for the CRA and the city. So I support this wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Additional comments, commissioners? Commissioner McCoy, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have optimism. I'm just concerned that, Mr. Scott Lewis always brings up the fact of staffing. I don't want to see a situation where we're now using a CRA staff member to operate this. I mean, think about that, guys. I wouldn't want to go into a business, subsidize or even fair rent if I know I got big brother, the government, standing over my shoulder watching. I can remember in maybe 2019, Mr. Evans, you took us on to Venture X, I believe it was. Very nice model. It works very well. It does good. I believe it's still in Palm Beach Gardens. I know there's one downtown, West Palm Beach, but I just am. I want the agency to focus on what the agency should be doing, as opposed to now we're taking a staff member who would otherwise be doing something in terms of like project management or some other ambassador or clean and safe type administrator now acting as a property manager, if you will. Certainly, I don't think that we're not. It's not an issue of capability, but how lucrative is it that we're gonna? And actually, let me ask you this: how's that model work in? I believe it's Delray.
Yes,
Who operates that?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans, you recognize.
I don't have all the details for the operation. The costs are extremely low that they've adopted. So it is not profit generating center for them. But it is an independent operation. So they do have some sort of management. And I could do some further research on it to see what kind of overhead they have to run that.
I would appreciate it because if we're already offering space, I don't want to use $100,000 of FTE salary to manage that. Obviously, I know it's going to cost something, but it'd be good to see the options in terms of how to actually deploy and manage that kind of workspace.
Are you complete, Commissioner, with your comments? Thank you, sir. And again, I am concerned with capability of management because we have we created an incubator program for a small business in our CRA, and fortunately they were able to succeed, to thrive, and continue to grow. But that was more so due to the efforts that Smooth and Me Please and Ms. Ashley put in versus the support that they got from being an incubator, and that was clearly not providing them the opportunity of really growing them. So I don't want to be set up these other businesses for failure by using CRA dollars, using an oversight to a incubator program and not properly managing it. So I am concerned with that. So let's look into, I love the idea, but how we can further kind of build that out. Whether it's a consulting firm, whether it's a staffer that's dedicated and assigned to it. I'm not sure what that model, I just like the vision of it, but I think we need to just build it out a little bit more. But I know we need to make a decision sooner than later because that space is going to be CO'd probably by the end of the year, if not early next year. Okay. If you want to continue, Mr. Evans, thank you. Commissioner
Yes.
McCoy, go ahead.
So to that point, Mr. Evans, do you have dollars in there in the budget for office relocation for the CRA?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans, you're recognized.
Yes, we have $150,000 as a line item that could be used for office relocation, furniture, IT connections, anything that's related to having to move.
Doesn't seem like a whole lot. I mean, were you gonna move a couple folding tables or something? But I mean, I would hope that if you're gonna take a staff of what do you have, 8 to 10 people?
Yes, eight people.
Okay. I mean, if you say that works, then okay. But I was probably thinking somewhere more than that. But because surely, I'm sure it costed more than that to move out of the space at the BB&T building, correct?
Mr. Chair, I
You're
think
recognized.
I think the numbers were similar to that.
Right, but then you didn't take the same equipment into the location you're at now, currently in City Hall.
Mr. Chair.
You recognize Mr. Evans?
Yes, that's correct. We moved. We had mostly new equipment when we moved. Yes.
Right. So okay. I just hope that obviously I don't expect the CRA to move into a new building, with recycled equipment that we've already brought back. I would think it'd probably be a charitable contribution to the city if they repurpose the space over in City Hall. But yeah, I would think that you're gonna have to do new FF&E. So,
Mr. Chair.
You recognize Mr. Evans?
Yes, and this concept is about 30 days old, I think, from our discussion. So we will certainly work on to define what those costs are going to be.
Thank you.
I think the question, Q&A, is more so from the interest and excitement, because like my colleague, I'm very interested in the idea and excited to see it possibly grow, but I just want to make sure that's done properly for our business community, small business community. If you want to continue with the presentation, Mr. Evans.
Yes, this slide identifies, we have a number of items in our budget that will require specific implementation and approval by this board going forward. I just wanted to identify those. The dates are simply, just projected dates when we could do them, but I wanted to identify the things that need to be done coming up for us to implement this budget. The first one is consideration of future capital project funding. The board's comments related to that a lot more dollars are needed for some of the significant infrastructure that's needed. That I think is an opportunity to apply a much more significant level of funding. Also, I think we'll need a workshop to determine the allocation of that $900,000. We have been in direct communication with the city on some of those projects and they're developing those budgets. Of course, the CRA dollars cannot replace city capital projects. So what we're doing is participating to see which portions of the project for neighborhoods we could add on or do separately. We would, of course, do the work in a coordinated manner. But if the city has a capital project, we can't replace those dollars with CRA dollars. So we have to carefully develop those plans together with the city. And then this board would have to determine the allocations in the coming months. Part of our discussions was on our successful Clean and Safe Innovative Policing Program. And I just wanted to suggest that we have a discussion at a meeting or perhaps a workshop where we bring in our police who can update the board on the progress and perhaps get some feedback from the commissioners on how you feel it's progressing and perhaps refocus to continue and expand upon that success of trying to clean up the Broadway corridor. And then the last item is we would need to bring you the final design for the CRA office and small business center. And that we would propose that we could get this completed in November, December, so that the board could look at the final design for the space, identify the small business programs and support and that you want to include in that space. And then once that was completed, we could immediately put the build out for construction bid, and that we would hope to accomplish that by December. This is a summary of personnel. I apologize, it's kind of small on the screen. It just identifies that we are proposing to maintain our current staff. We do have a position of CRA clerk that has been vacant for several years now. Based on discussions with individual board members, we are proposing to keep that position, but also to hold it as possible a senior administrative assistant who could train to be a CRA clerk. We have had difficulty filling the position, so we propose to hold that position open in the case we could find one, but also perhaps as the year progresses, if we can find a candidate who's willing to go through the training, that we could put them in and then have them complete the training to completely fulfill that position, since we've had trouble filling it. Again, one change is we're adding assistant clean and safe manager, and then maintaining all of our clean and safe ambassadors that we currently have. The budget includes that the CRA would receive the benefits equal to the city employees. This has been the practice of the board for the past about 5 years. This would be based on whatever's negotiated between city council and the various unions and staffing agreements. One of those was recently approved. The Clean and Safe ambassadors would receive the equivalent to the raises in the SEIU contract, so we've included that in this budget. That was approved by City Council Resolution 121-24. That would provide a 15% increase to the Clean and Safe ambassadors, which would go into effect on October 1st.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCoy, you're recognized.
thank you. So is that 1.5 positions of FTE for ambassador that we're removing?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, you're recognized.
So one of the ambassador positions we would propose to move into the Clean and Safe assistant manager. So we would effectively be just losing 1.5 position. It's a part-time position that's currently not filled.
I'm sorry, you're going to move an ambassador into a Clean and Safe. So that's actually out in the community? I don't understand what you mean.
Mr. Chair.
You're recognized.
Yes, I'm proposing to create a new position of the Clean and Safe assistant manager and then remove one of the positions from the Clean and Safe ambassadors. And effectively, we have identified a staff member who's already been acting in that capacity, and I would like to promote him officially.
Okay.
I kind of want to understand that. Real quick, Dr. Spiritus, no, I just want to understand that as well. So what is the scope of work for that assistant manager? Because I guess the concern was we're taking the ambassador out of the community to be an assistant manager. Are they still going to be in the community? Are they going to be doing administrative work? What's that scope of work look like for the assistant manager?
Mr. Chair.
You're recognized.
That position is largely out in the community, direct supervision of the employees. They do have some paperwork, but they're an active on-site management type role.
So it'll be more of a title for the supervisor. I guess the assistant manager is titled, and they'll just be promoted from one of the ambassadors.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Dr. Spiritus, you recognize.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, so I want to get this straight as well. So you're saying that you already have someone in mind for the manager's job, and you believe and that person is the assistant manager?
Mr. Chair.
You recognize.
No, we have a vacant Clean and Safe manager position, which we would like to advertise. This is for the assistant manager position. So we have a team lead who is an ambassador now, who we'd like to promote to the assistant manager. The Clean and Safe manager position is vacant, and we would like to fill that in the coming year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That clarified my confusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you. So is the team lead just a title? Is there a difference in the pay scale from a team lead to an ambassador?
Mr. Chair, yes, there is a difference. Team leads do receive more pay than a regular ambassador.
So why not just create more, why not? Well, actually, let's talk about that. So the team lead is in an identified position in the classification of jobs. This just is a de facto ambassador who has the title of team lead, but a team lead is not a quote unquote job classification position. Correct?
Mr. Chair, I would refer to Ms. Desir, who's our HR.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize Ms. Desir.
the team lead is a classified position with the agency.
Follow up.
Commissioner McCoy, you recognize.
So where is it at on here currently in the current list of positions here?
It is not listed on the report here. It is under the Clean and Safe Ambassador FTE, but there is a separate breakdown of the team leads.
Okay, so this goes to the point that Mr. Lewis brings up. So why are we creating another position? If you want this team lead to have the supervisory role, I can understand you may want to increase the salary classification or move them to a different scale, and I'm not undermining what you're doing because I know these guys put in the work and you guys would know this, the team administration would know this much better than me, but why do we need to create another level of supervisory if that person already is inherently a team lead, which is already a classification above a clean and safe ambassador.
Mr. Chair,
You're recognized.
the role of that assistant manager would be to provide administrative support for the actual clean and safe manager, where the clean and safe manager will really tackle the budgeting and the overall aspect of the clean and safe department. The assistant manager would be assisting with other items that the clean and safe manager wouldn't help. So that is why we need that position, so that middle person can assist things that the clean and safe manager would not be working on.
But we need the position. I mean, and I know you're speaking from your opinion and operationally what has occurred, but you cannot convince me, Mr. Zier, that we need that position if we don't have a manager currently. We have not had a manager for clean and safe for some time. So you're going to convince me that we need an assistant manager when we've already had a vacant manager position?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans, you're recognized.
The reason we've been able to get through the period of not having a clean and safe manager is because of all the work of all of the ambassadors, really, but primarily this one team lead who has been acting to help us implement the program. So the proposal to formalize that is to recognize his contribution as a team lead.
He gets recognized bi-weekly. I think you guys get paid on a Friday. But help me understand, and because I'm missing it. We've had that manager position vacant for at least a year, possibly a year and a half, if not longer.
The position has been, Mr. Chair,
You're recognized.
the position has been vacant for 7 months now.
7 months.
The
Wait, is
clean
that
and
the
safe-
Laura Pressy?
LaPresti's position, correct.
Okay. And prior to that, because he was short-lived. He had been here 8 or 9 months?
That is correct.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand. And I respect what you're saying, but I'm just not quite there where I can understand that we need a position when we've had. And, I would say the 8 months, a lot of that was, at least 6 months of it was probably in orientation or probation. So I'm just not convinced that we need another assistant manager, because let me tell you something. Being in the CRA, working and having a business in the CRA, at 1:40 a.m., I just so happen to come through the neighborhood. And what do I find? Somebody doing illegal dumping. Not to mention there's 30 people walking up and down the streets. And I call the cops and they say, yeah, they've been doing this all night. So I'm trying to figure out, I don't want another office staff personnel. I want to see somebody that has boots on the ground and not a title in the position. If the team lead is doing it, can we not figure out a way to expand them, help them, school them, educate them, give them tuition reimbursements to help them get there, but adding another position, and we're taking someone that would, be doing more administrative than actual, the, front line work, to me is just not, you're not selling me on it. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And also, I wanted to look at the scheduling and the timing availability for the ambassadors. Because the ambassadors currently are running all over our CRA, what does it look like to possibly expand our ambassadors program, possibly adding an additional? Because my colleague, I have a business in the CRA as well, and I'm running into the same issues and concerns. So running the ambassadors ragged with only having 14, taking one off the street, I was actually going to consider seeing if we could expand the program and look to add an additional 4 or 5 ambassadors. But I'd want to see what the schedule looks like, what their timing looks like, and the availability, what the routes look like, before I actually determine if we want to add more money into it. But I would like to see a few more ambassadors, personally. Commissioner McCoy.
So I would have him to clarify, what you're talking about is not, we don't have 15 people on the street. That's inclusive of those that work in this building.
So that would include how many ambassadors? Well, that's why I would want to see the schedule, because I'm not really sure of the full makeup. How many ambassadors work in the marina?
Some of the ambassadors fill in where needed, but approximately half of the ambassadors are engaged here at Marina Village.
Okay. So for the one location at Marina Village and all the CRA businesses, homes, and community throughout our CRA district only have about 5 to 7 ambassadors, that's not sufficient for the CRA. So I would actually propose that we add a few additional ambassadors. But if you can kind of provide to us, what does the schedule look like? What is the day in life of the Clean and Safe program? So we can determine. I would actually not have an issue with pouring more into the ambassador program, because I think it provides a great opportunity for business development growth and a great vision, because it's the first line when people come into our community, especially when they're traveling on the cruise ship, when they're coming over to Singer Island. So those are things that I would love to see.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Spears?
First of all, I do concur with you and Board Member McCoy, and I believe the program should be expanded because we know that not only is it the Marina Village, but it's also the Ocean Mall. Question, Mr. Evans, do you see a difference in the need for the ambassadors or the work of the ambassadors on season and off season?
Mr. Chair.
You're recognized.
I think that they're, like, if you take, for example, somewhere like the Ocean Walk or the park adjacent to Ocean Walk, or also the fishing bridge, we do have different demands on the amount of cleaning, the amount of assistance that ambassadors provide when we have more visitors at those locations during certain times of year.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
So
that may be the reason in the last 7 months that the staff has been able to carry the load. But if they have to do this in December and January and February, it may be a different situation. Mr. Evans?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCoy, recognized.
So thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence and also acknowledging, I can remember, and Board Member Miller Anderson was around that time when this program first rolled out, is because, I remember the hats, I remember the original outfits, but these folks were actually going to businesses. They were, in fact, ambassadors. So when you arrived in the city, the expectation was that you would be greeted by such. We've moved in the model kind of transition to keeping the community clean and that sort of thing. But my point exactly, I've been on that ship and I've met folks that literally told me that they flew in. This was the weirdest thing. They flew in. They had never been to Palm Beach County before, and they flew in just to get onto the Margaritaville. And I'm saying to myself, how did you find this place? And some sort of marketing that the Margaritaville has. And the first question they ask is, what is it to do? It'd be ideal that when that ship comes in, that the ambassadors or some part of what we do or represent here at the CRA is reflected. It happens right when you arrive at PBIA. When you go to Atlanta, there is something that's directing you to what the city has to offer. Hopefully, and then my thought was that's what the ambassador is supposed to do. But cleaning bridges and great, that's great. But I want to see more of being able to point someone to, okay, well, we have the Marriott. We also have, may not be exactly in the city, but we have Sailfish that is a marina and a resort. So I would love to have more people on the streets, because let me tell you something. I don't know, it gotta be me. I see the weirdest things happen in this community. On 11th Street and Broadway, about 3 months ago, I picked up a fire hydrant that was laying on the side of the road. How does that happen? I'm just like, and it was an accident waiting to happen. Of course I could have called, but who do I call at 10 o'clock at night? So it's like, I want more people out in the community and less people in the offices. I mean, certainly if we're going to do a CRA, it should be about making the community better and not, adding in another layer of bureaucracy, in my opinion. And Mr. Evans, I'm just giving you my perspective. And if there's something I don't know, I appreciate you guys sharing it with me, but I'm just still stuck. And I can tell you, I only know of about 4, and I can probably identify the 4 right off the top of my head who are actually out on the street. There's not 8 people. You don't have 8 people. You don't have 8 singular people out, ambassadors that's going up and down US 1, Blue Heron, and over at Ocean Mall. I can't believe that. So I would venture to say 4, perhaps 5. And I probably could name them by names without being specific and going on record, but I just don't see 8 people in the community. And I want us to refine that.
So if we can take a look at that, possibly, Mr. Evans, if I could, even if it's just adding a few additional roles or finding places for them and strategic locations. The cruise ship coming in, working on that schedule, that's a great time, but that's only a daily or every other 2 to 4 days where they would be spending 2 hours there when people get there and 2 hours when they return, or a couple hours throughout the day. So it gives an opportunity to have some additional full-time employees, but then also placing them strategically throughout the city to point them in the right direction. I have a fond love for the ambassadors and the Clean and Safe program because my former legislative aide started in that program, wearing that same hat that Ms. Mary Anderson made him wear, and now he's an assistant to the city manager, went up the ranks. So many of the former ambassadors have been poached from that program, and they work throughout the city now. So it's a great training hub as well to give opportunities for individuals coming into the city to get started in that program or to make a long career out of the program. So there's options for them in that ambassador program, and it's a great look for the city.
Mr. Chair,
Comment? Ms. Evans, we recognize.
just thinking towards implementation of the budget in the next 7 days, perhaps, or either if it's not approved tonight or if you brought it back on the 11th, we would still have to send it to you next week. I hear a lot of the comments, and we've been taking notes, and I think a lot of them are addressed the board's desire to look at how the CR Clean and Safe operation is operating and managed and staffing assignments. As far as feedback related to adopting a CRA budget, is it the board's direction to not create an assistant manager position, but to create 2 additional ambassador positions? Is that, and then also to have a future date, a look at some sort of the managing, operating, implementation of the program. But as far as from the budget perspective, is that the feedback that I'm hearing the board would like?
Mr. McCoy, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My personal opinion is I think that and you said you already have it in here, but just the way it appears to us, just if that team lead can be reclassified as an assistant manager, I'm okay with that. But creating an assistant manager on top of a team lead, I have some heartburn with that. Now, the other thing is, members, and this is totally the prerogative of the board, but I don't know that we need to send Mr. Evans back to go and work on the budget. I'm just not convinced that I can tell you that we got 15 up there. There's not 7 people out there in the streets, Mr. Evans. So, I would like to see if we could kind of resolve or hash out whatever concerns we have. I know the chair wants to see 2 additional people, but that could just be a matter of shifting people that would normally be on the inside of the Marina Event Center, into a hybrid role where they often or sometimes go onto the roadway. So I don't know, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think that's very much possible. Is it, Mr. Evans?
Mr. Chair?
You recognize Mr. Evans.
Yes, that's very possible that we just reprioritize our daily staff assignments to increase presence on the street and in the areas that have a higher public presence.
Thank you. Follow up.
You recognize.
Members, if you haven't seen, Broadway is becoming Skid Row. It is people sleeping everywhere. I mean, if you come out here at night, it's just becoming where we have to have constant maintenance. The police is constantly on call. So I just would love to see that we have additional folks. I'm not suggesting the night shift because I think that's dedicated for our police department, but certainly if we're going to consider this, let's just kind of keep in mind that the homeless problem has really gotten to the point where even Avenue C here, right along the park, if you were to come by here at any given time, you could actually see a family sleeping inside of their vehicle that's parked in public space. Now, they may not be a harm to anyone, but what happens to the trash? What happens to the waste? All of that stuff ends up right on the street, and it becomes an issue. So that's what I just want to bring to the board's attention, that that we've seen a very large increase in that. In fact, I arrived last night to find someone sleeping on cardboard, pushing a shopping cart right at my business. And it's like, this is a regular and recurring thing.
Chair?
You recognize Mr. Evans? I'm sorry.
As
You
board,
recognize Dr. Spiritus?
as Board Member McCoy said, when I leave here in the meetings, I see the homeless people sleeping right next to the marina. I mean, right in the park, right next to the restrooms. They're camping out there on a regular basis, and I feel bad for these people. We should probably find homes for them or a place to go, but certainly sleeping on the streets and using our restroom is not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to address your comments, I'm okay with reallocating just some of the positions on the clean and safe. The only concerns that I have from the budget tonight was the infrastructure, the dollars allocated for infrastructure, making sure that we are properly allocating enough, minimizing the rollover funds. Broadway, I agree with my colleague. Jerome Golden Center closed, and we have taken on a large influx of homeless and mental health population and individuals without homes. So we're struggling with that. And then also the dollars going into the co-op space, seeing how that program is going to be built out, making sure that whatever money we allocate for that is properly allocated and built out with a proper strategic program. And if we have to assign an FTE to that program, but number one priority is the infrastructure. I want to put as much dollars as possible into establishing a better infrastructure for our CRA neighborhoods. Additional comments from the board? Mr. Evans, if you want to continue the presentation.
Mr. Chair, that completes the presentation.
Thank you. Additional comments? Commissioner McCoy, you're recognized.
Last thing, relative to salaries, is there a COLA also built into this for everyone else?
Mr. Chair.
You're recognized.
Yes. So without knowing exactly what the city is going to approve that we would then provide, we have included within the budget that the assumed COLA is 5%. That is placed in the budget so that can be provided to the employees if there's no other solutions or implementation that is adopted by the city council for the city staff.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Additional comments from the board? Additional comments from Mr. Evans? Reference to the budget?
No, Mr. Chair.
Discussion by Executive Director?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. You're looking for direction for the adoption of the budget. Did you want us to
Mr.
make a
Chair.
motion? I'm sorry.
I do have a comment card.
Thank you.
Brandy Davis Balsamo.
Thank you.
Balsamo.
Welcome, Ms. Randy.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chair Lawson, I'm here tonight because I've been involved in this process for a couple years now, advocating on part of the community in the CRA to get funding. We're your tax base, and we have been in the CRA for now 40 years, 44 years, I believe, and have never seen a dime come back. And as my understanding is that when you have a CRA, you have an obligation to invest, that you're getting a special right, those TIF dollars that Randy Sherman came up here and talked about so enthusiastically. That's our money. That's why my house that I bought, in COVID times, is paying $4,000, and you get like 95% of that. So that would actually be a $400,000 house. And now those homes that are at $450,000, they're almost like they're $800,000 homes. And you have houses on the waterfront that are being sold in the millions. And yet our properties are at risk. We're having to drive through water. You've got discharge that's going into the intracoastal, which is your tourism. That's how this is all happening, is that waterway. That's why people want to be here. And you have pollution and runoff that's going through these pipes that have never been upgraded. I think that neighborhood's it's one of the first neighborhoods. So 25th Street is actually from the 1920s. There's a pipe that looks like a sewage pipe that dumps straight into the intracoastal. I've tried to talk to View about it, and they just wave their hands as if it doesn't exist. We have very serious concerns about the pipes. I listened to all the meetings. I listened to the last meeting, and there was talk about asbestos in cement pipes. I don't know how we can be talking about anything else but fixing the infrastructure. Because when we're talking about a renaissance, how can there be a renaissance on a house of cards? How can there be a renaissance when we have pipes that are either polluting the people who are swimming and the water that brings tourism, or we have it that's, giving us serious health concerns? That, I just, like, I may be naive, but that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There are serious concerns about the piping that is underneath. And I don't think you're going to get many developers who are going to come in, who are going to want to put in things next to pipes that have asbestos. That has to be fixed, hands down, has to be fixed. And the water that is backing up and is causing flooding that homeowners have to drive through, it's not fair to keep saying, oh yeah, we'll fix that later, we'll fix that later. We're here, we pay taxes. There's a fiduciary duty on behalf of cities to actually maintain the infrastructure. There's even a legal requirement as part of the permit that you get to discharge into the intracoastal that you inspect and maintain the pipes. That permit is up now, and the city isn't doing anything. So I seriously don't understand, but I'm going to advocate once more that we care about the community and we put money into the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Evans, the adoption of the budget, did you need a motion from the board, or are we going to do that at the next meeting?
Mr. Chair, I would need a motion from the board.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Miller Anderson?
So I thought there were some things that you were going to want to bring back.
Mr. Chair?
You recognize Mr. Evans.
I tried to identify all of the implementation feedback provided by the board. I didn't identify any specific changes to the budget that I had to make as a result of our conversations. We did discuss a number of items related to how projects will proceed, what needs to occur before the monies are spent.
But like the Chair Lawson was talking about possibly bringing additional ambassadors to get, you wanted that before we adopted the budget, right?
I think we discussed it. Commissioner McCoy made a recommendation to just reallocate some of the FTEs from the 14 that's being proposed to possibly just having them out in the neighborhoods versus them being in the building. There were other dollars that we talked about with the infrastructure. So I think there were some things that we wanted to identify. I wasn't sure if we were ready to vote on it tonight. There was some unreadiness that I did personally have, but most of it was just making sure we're properly allocating the funds.
I mean, with the things that were brought up, I would think we weren't going to do this until the 11th.
I wouldn't mind seeing 2 additional ambassadors, and also really just looking at the infrastructure, because we have about $900,000 for infrastructure. But I believe one of the last speakers, she mentioned just kind of the need of pouring dollars back into the roads and infrastructure. And without partnering and doing that workshop with the city to kind of take a look at some of those funds, it's going to be hard, but at least having the funds available and ready to make those investments into the neighborhoods. I'm okay with waiting to the 11th. Those are some of my things that I added, just those 4 things, which was the infrastructure, clean and safe program, and then the co-op space. But those were not really budget items. The only one was the clean and safe program.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Spirit, you recognized.
Mr. Evans, do you think it's possible for you to meet with Related and maybe get a release from them to act in good faith with us, since we've been acting in good faith with them with respect to the $900,000?
Mr. Chair?
You recognize.
It is certainly possible for us to set up that meeting and make that request. I would have to, yeah, we can immediately try to set it up. I think it would take a few days, but it wouldn't take that long.
I think that's worth a shot. Thank you.
Commissioner McCoy, you recognize.
Thank you. So Board Member Miller Anderson and Chair Lawson, I understand your concerns about the 2 positions. If that's the desire of the board, then, okay. And I'm okay with doing it. I just wanted to know if Mr. Evans had the ability to work in the ideal concept of having more folks out there on the road. But if the board wants to add additional people, I'm okay with that. However, let's keep in mind, Mr. Evans, your first slide contemplated a 15%. Remember last week, Wednesday, we approved SEIU's contract on consent. So the 15% is already contemplated. Now we're talking about another 5%. So if you're talking about adding an additional 2 FTEs, I mean, we got to kind of know. I don't even know what a FTE. What's the dollar amount associated with a entry level clean and safe ambassador position?
With
The full FTE cost for the agency
per person or
per person, it has to be about 80,000, 70.
Mr. Chair?
You're recognized.
With the approval of the SEIU contract, an entry start off pay for an ambassador would go up to 2163.
Right, but I mean the agency cost. So with benefits and everything, I'm sure it has to be somewhere
Mr.
somewhere
Chair,
about 60,000.
You're recognized.
Roughly about.
Yeah.
Mr. Evans, you're
Roughly
recognized.
about.
it's approximately 70,000.
So we're talking about adding an additional $140,000 for 2 additional FTEs. So that's a substantial amount for a change, but we also did have a rollover about 4.2 million. So looking at infrastructure, I don't mind Mr. Evans bringing it back, but Commissioner McCoy.
But members, so let's be clear on this, right? Mr. Lawson, you're in the CRA every day. Mr. Spiridish, so are you. Ms. Miller Anderson, you're not too far off when commuting. But I would hate to add 2 positions, right? And I come through here and I see people sitting around. I'm telling you, I'm not gonna like that. Because I tell you, I've came in and I see folks leisurely hanging around. If we're gonna add positions, people need to be out here working, addressing some of the slumming blight. If not, then what are we doing? Just to give somebody a job? I mean, this ain't labor finders, where you get to dress up nice and get a salary. I mean, I expect, just as much as we all have to have our professional careers, these people need to work. But I want to give you whatever tools you need, and I got to commend you, Mr. Scott Evans, on being able to deploy and get this budget together in this short time period. And I don't want to be, members, let's do this, right? Whatever Mr. Evans wants, whatever we can do as a board to help him, but I'd be darned if I sit here and have any administrator tell us what I heard within the last month, that we didn't give them the support that they need. For us, you're right, Mr. Chair. There's no reason we can carry over $4 million when we have things that we need to be taken care of. But if you and the board believes that we need to add 2 additional positions, let's give them whatever resources they need, because I don't want to put anyone in a position to publicly make us feel like we're not supporting them. So if you need 2 positions and you want to add it right now at a nominal, let me not say nominal, at 150,000 or 160,000. Cool, but I would expect from an administration, Ms. Desir and Mr. Evans, that these folks are actually doing work. But here's where it comes to be tricky. So if you got 2 additional people, now does that now mean we need to deploy additional equipment, additional assets? Like it's just not just adding 2 additional bodies. I mean, there's another $200,000 that's probably associated with, now you got to have transportation. Now they got to have their own set of tools and equipment. So members, we got one shot to get it right. I want to be able to support them in what they do. This agency, we hear from, one of our constituents about, we have staffing that surpasses most CRAs in the area. But if they're out there doing the work where the city doesn't come into these neighborhoods, I'm okay with supporting that. I can, support doing that because I know that there's a gap and they're standing in that gap. But I want to make sure that we know we're not just giving them 2 positions, that there's a whole complement of other items that have to come along with it, members. So that's all I have.
I did have a follow-up to that. How many actual ambassadors do we have? I know that we have budgeted 14. Do we have 14 ambassadors?
Mr. Chair,
You're recognized.
including team leads, we do have 14 ambassadors at the present moment.
Team leads. And how many team leads do we have?
We have 4 team leads and 1 interim assistant manager, and the remainder are the ambassadors.
Okay, and the scope of work for the team leads are the same as the regular ambassadors?
The team lead does do work as the ambassadors, but they also oversee a number of ambassadors.
4 to oversee.
So 4 team leads overseeing 6 people?
Well, they do also have other scope of work to do. There's a team lead who is responsible for all the vendors and supplies here at the marina. There's a team lead that's responsible for the clean and safe projects outside the properties that we have. There's another team lead who is our night shift that works evenings and weekends. that oversees the staff in the marina during those hours. And we do have a fourth team lead as well that works with the clean and safe on the outside projects.
You recognize? Ms.
How many
Williamson?
people are on a team?
The marina currently has about 4 or 5. And then on the clean safe side, we have about 4 of them, 4 team members.
Then the other 2 team leads. So how many people are assigned to each team lead is the question.
Mr. Chair,
You recognize?
they are, they're not, at any one time, we don't have a specific team with a leader. What we do is, with the variety of operations, some being outside, some being inside this building, some being after hours in this building, we assign the position of team lead to do more responsible things that generally might be for the entire team, but they're not specifically leading around like a 4-person crew at all times. They just have a team lead designation because they have some responsibilities, beyond what a normal ambassador position would be.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Spears, you recognize?
Wasn't finished.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Miller Anderson, finish your comments. I apologize. Commissioner Spears.
So the question was, I didn't say I'm looking for 2 people. I was just kind of supporting Chair Lawson, but do you all feel that you have work for 2 additional people or however many people we're talking about? I mean, is that something? And the expectation is everybody works. So if we add 2 or don't add 2, I mean, everybody has a job to work. So I don't think that should be an issue. But do you feel 2 additional people are needed?
Mr. Chair.
You recognize?
I think it depends on the level of expectation of the board for our public presence. What I would recommend is that we look at our existing staff and try to reassign some of our staff members to spend more time externally. I think that will take a couple of months to see how that works. And then we can see the impact on the operation if we need to actually add someone, because by moving some of the ambassadors out of this building, we'll have to see what the impact would be. And quite honestly, just being recently in this position, I wasn't over clean and safe as planning and development director. So I apologize. I'm coming from a
Nope.
limited.
No apology necessary. We appreciate you taking on the effort. So thank you. And I agree with my colleagues. So taking on the sediments, whatever you guys need. Finish your comments, Ms. Anderson. Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Spiritus?
Mr. Evans, and I know that you have not been the executive director for a while. Have you looked into business improvement district with the people at the Ocean Wall, at Ocean Walk?
Mr. Chair.
You recognize?
We have not, but I will say a lot of CRAs have moved out of the clean and safe ambassador business, I guess, for lack of a shorter term, better term. It was what I think would be a good future pathway would be to create, as we develop phase 2 of the marina, to create what the city of West Palm Beach has done and a lot of other cities is put their ambassador program under a business district type organization. That's what the CRAs across Florida have been doing. I think right now for what our needs are and the currently position we are, I don't think Ocean Walk is big enough to make a big change like that. But certainly once we get phase 2 of the marina proceeding, I think that's something the board should consider, is following agencies like what Delray Beach and what City of West Palm Beach have done by putting their clean and safe teams under the business improvement districts, downtown development authorities, as opposed to CRA.
Mr. Chair?
You recognize?
Right, just so the community and the commission understand what a business improvement district is. The local stores form an association, a business improvement district. They get approved for that, and they all put in their share of money to pay for a group like the ambassadors for their own, for the security of the area and the safety of the area, and the marketing of the area. So it is something that we should really look into. This is done nationally. It's been done nationally for years and years. And I think when you talk about the marina project, of course, you have to talk about the marina itself. They should also be a member. The operators of the marina should be a member of a bid as well. But I think that maybe in the Ocean Mall, you might have enough businesses to maybe subsidize the ambassador program right now. And it's something that we ought to, I think, look into if you're so inclined, Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair, we can certainly have that discussion.
Okay. So to those comments, Board, Commissioner McCoy, did you have comments?
I just want Commissioner Miller Anderson was speaking, and you were both kind of going back and forth about, is this something that we need to do? But, you gotta keep in mind, this building is a 7-day-a-week operation, right? And then if it's not this building, then they're out on Sunday, out assisting with the tiki market or, facilitating that. So I can understand, and, let's be practical, right? If I'm coming to get a job to work inside the Marina Event Center, now you're gonna tell me on Tuesday, McCoy, you gotta go and get the weed eater and go over to Avenue E and Blue Heron and now do the lot. I mean, I can understand there might be some hesitation and pause, especially if you're now the ambassador that's greeting people that is trolleying folks from the parking lot. Now you're being asked to now go out and do, and I don't know if it's been set up in the job descriptions in that fashion, but I would much rather give the positions, because these people, and you got to think, right? I've had an event here, and I was like, first I start off with this person, and then at the end it says, oh, well, my shift ends now, and this person comes in. So, I can kind of understand why there's different team leads for different shifts, because this is more or less, and let's think about something, members. The city doesn't operate 7 days a week, but this building does. The CRA does. So I can see that there's a need for 2 additional positions, but I just don't want to pull up on nobody and they sitting down because I'm making a phone call, because I expect people to work. I mean, that's just where it's at. Especially when you got residents that come here that live in the CRA, and they expect that we're being good fiduciaries. That's all I have, and I think I'm getting the cue that it's time for us to bring it in for a landing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So are we, Commissioner Spirit, is your recognized?
Just one more question. Counselor, what will it take for us if, we have, as we said, we have millions of dollars sitting there in carryover that has not been budgeted. What will it take for us to amend this budget or budget other funds that are coming in? What process will we have to go through?
If you pass it tonight, you could do a budget amendment. We'd come back and you pass another resolution to have an amended budget, or if you wait to the 11th, as was suggested before, it could be passed with the suggestions taken tonight, implemented in the new budget to be brought back to you on the 11th. There's no, so I guess to answer your question, there's no urgency or no need to pass it tonight. It could be passed on September the 11th.
Mr. Chair?
You're recognized.
So I think that might be the better way to move, to wait till September 11th, because we did ask Mr. Evans to look into budgeting probably $2 to $3 million. And that's the carryover money, Mr. Evans.
Mr. Chair.
And to that, go ahead, Mr. Evans, you're recognized.
The carryover gets brought into the budget as revenue. So the proposed budget before you tonight includes the tax revenue and the carryover from the previous year. So there's no additional dollars. It's all in your current proposed budget.
But, Mr. Chair?
You're recognized.
But I thought you said that only like 1.2 million, 1.5 million was encumbered. The balance of it was unencumbered.
Mr. Chair.
You're recognized.
Yes, there are some of those dollars that are unencumbered. But they're encumbered in this proposed budget. So if you wanted to change how you wanted to expend the dollars next year, you would have to reduce something that's in this budget in order to add something.
Okay, Mr. Chair?
You're recognized.
Okay, so that's different than what I think the chair and I thought before when you were telling us you had the carryover money. I guess it's all encumbered now. Now we understand that. I thought you only encumbered 1.2 million of that money. But the additional 900,000, if we're able to get the release from related, clearly in the long run, they're not going to get the money anyway. One way or another, they're not going to get the money. Either they build the project or they don't build the project. Either way, they're not going to get the money. So that will be additional funds that we'll have to budget. So we can do that through a budget amendment, I guess.
So to that point, I think we did say we want to leave as much flexibility as possible. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for taking on this initiative of getting this budget to us timely fashion and being able to address the concerns, because we want to make sure that we're not holding hostage or stagnant anything in the CRA district. We're giving you all the resources necessary, and you've done a great job with providing this budget for us. So thank you. And you've left flexibility to allow for the new director that comes in to have those budget meetings done. So any encumbered or unencumbered monies will be properly assigned at the time. Additional comments from the board? Attorney Smith, any comments?
No comments, sir.
Any comments from my colleagues?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy, recognized.
Move to approve. the budget.
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
I'm going to say no because I would like to wait until the 11th.
Commissioner Spiritus,
Discussion. I mean, is there something that we're looking for on the 11th?
A yes from you. Commissioners,
Yes.
discussion. My colleague asked, is there something we're looking for?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner. I mean, I don't have a problem with going to the 11th. I really don't. We're going to be here already. So, if Mr. Scott Evans seems to have gotten direction on how to resolve all of the outstanding issues, unless there's something that we.
One vote, and my one vote is no.
But in the spirit of compromise and reasoning, I'm trying to figure out if there's something that. Oh, you need a cooling off period. That's actually what the legislature has. They have a 72-hour. Isn't that right, Mrs. Smith?
Yes, sir.
After it's presented, you have to wait 72 hours before you adopt it. You know, I would like to approve the budget, so I would like to resume voting. I just thought maybe we missed something, because I would.
I've already shared it.
Okay.
Good.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I just tried my best.
Of course, just in the direction. Go ahead, Mr. Spiritus.
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Spiritus,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes with Miller and Commissioner Miller Anderson dissenting.
Additional-
3-1.
No. The time that Commissioner Lanier left,
She's absent
she's absent, yeah.
for the vote.
If you could just acknowledge that Commissioner Lanier was absent from the vote.
Commissioner Lanier is absent from the vote for 7A.
Additional comments from the board? Any general comments? With no further business, meeting's adjourned.